Well, hello to everyone again. I would expect that this time, as you reflect on our last time, that you're coming much fuller of information than you ever had before. Either you've been overwhelmed by what's been going on and you're wondering how you got into this, or you're at a point of saying it's now beginning to make sense to me. How do I really apply this to things that I care about, to my personal life, my business, and so on and so forth? So this is the time of prove what you believe and prove that you can do it. And so that's what we're going to do. The first thing I'm going to do is give you a little preparatory review of what this section is about. This section is about social system development and personal systems development, piece of social system development. And so the PSD, personal system development, is social synthesis at the microcognitive level, and it is the starting point for managing the quality of our individual lives. Priority at this level is focused on continuous improvement of our health, character, and ability. The universal goal selected for individuals is self-fulfillment, and the key role to be played is that of fellowship, in which learning, knowing, leading, inform, and activate our personal system development. Okay, going on to the first slide of particular importance here is to remind us, as we have been doing every session that we've had, that this is really all about you, and that we are still working on the concept that every one of us, including myself, are trying to figure out to what part of our life do we dedicate ourselves being like everybody else, let's say, and maybe just cruise control is how our life is going to be managed? Or are we going to spend a lot of time, or a good amount of time, adding capability, learning new things, and trying to get more out of our life as long as we possibly can? It doesn't mean we have to do it forever, but it means it's there for us if we want to do it for a period of time. And of course, that's tied into our self-fulfillment, high performance, common good, and societal or social enlightenment. And as we build our capability, as I mentioned last time, we had done all of this work. We had come up to here and we had sort of patched it together in a way that everything was represented, but not necessarily in exactly how it was presented. But every piece was in here. And that was done purposely so that we could have that visual, that mental model as we go forward into 10, 11, 12, and 13. Right now we're in 10 and we're focusing on the personal system development piece. With that said, every one of these 4 chapters that we're now going to do has a starting point like this, because every one is built upon the same premise that there are 3 major segments where you put your focus. In life, we should be taking care of our health, taking care of our character as just fundamental things to survive. But prospering has a lot to do with our inability or ability to actually work, produce, and get things done in life. So this whole chapter of work is based upon optimizing this relationship, but it's done so within the personal system, and all the reasoning competencies we talked about are in play. And around the outside, what you see is sort of a growth process where ideas and how we think about our life become strategies. And those strategies are implemented in our lives, and we then review how well we're doing, and we adapt along the way. The whole idea of assessing where you are, adapting to the realities of where you are, and then making a new plan or modifying a plan is essential to the personal growth, because you have to be self-critical enough to say, I want to be better all the time. And if I want to be better, I know I have to improve, because I'm never at my top performance at any particular time in life. I'm just trying to get better all the time. So with that in mind, then we come to this, probably the most complicated diagram that we have, or chart that we have. It's a powerful expression of about 6 different individuals, all of whom are noted at at different times for their contribution to understanding life growth and development. There are people who have talked about how women change in time, how men change in time, how you grow from a child and an adolescence and come into your adulthood. And I spent a good amount of time trying to figure out how could you compress all that knowledge into one chart which would say, everybody's represented in here. Everybody's on the page. And even though we're not going to give their whole theory a lot of time, we're going to say, but you're all cozy with one another, aren't you? If you really knew each other and were living at the same time, you may have gotten together and said, how do we draw a diagram that represents the wholeness of what we're contributing to this field? So what I'm going to tell you about very quickly is there are 5 parallel routes here. It's always about people growing from their adulthood in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. And getting better is thinking, learning, knowing, leading, and achieving. There are 2 ways you can talk about that as far as what getting better is like, is that the higher on the scale you go is getting better. Or you can talk about the volume commanded by that activity on the graphic. Excuse me. This is about volume. In the center, there's a notional concept that in the center, this is the capability of people growing over time. The issue is how much change in this gray zone occurs if people are indifferent or they're stagnated. The idea is you don't have to really change a lot over time. You could be the same person at 30, 50, 60 that you were always before. And with that in hand, you can be very happy if that's what you want to be. The purple around it says, but these are the potentials. These are the potentials for what you can do. So that said, let me just take these 5 levels. The first one has to do with the micro recognition or cognition. As we go on to the macro, the mega, and the meta, this is all about youth. In our youth, we're almost always about ourselves. This is children, they're all about themselves. When you come into your adolescence, you're still mostly just about yourself. As you get to blend into society and into organizations, you start to understand that there are others there also, so you have to take them into account. And as you move through life, you start to find out that really there's a community that you all exist in, and it's bigger than just you and your job. And so you got to think about that. And then lastly, if you really mature, you start to think about, what is this all about? What is this whole life experience about? So you can look at that as a maturity dimension. And down at the bottom, learning cycles are reflect, reason, and renew. Reflect, reason, and renew. Reflect, reason, and renew. Reflect, reason, and renew. The whole idea is getting from one to the next is about reflect, reason, and renew. So at the top level, we're talking about the dimensions of human cognition at higher and higher levels, but we know down at the bottom, you only get there by going through cycles of learning. Now there are 3 or 4 interesting other points that are here. One of the specialty areas that we have to look at is the psychological objectives. And the way that works is it's about having an identity as you're a child, growing to having a relationship or intimacy where you're about parenthood and getting into your adult life. Then you go through your working life, and eventually around 50 or so, you get into a period called generativity, which is a period you're saying, well, I've been there and done that, now I got to share it with others. And that continues on to what they call life integrity. That's when you have a sense that your life is self-fulfilled and everything has come together in proper balance. So that's one of the important growth dimensions, and that growth dimension contributes to what goes on in the center here. There's a second one that has to do with archetypes or relationships, and some people have said that there's the warrior zone where the ego drives everything that we do. Then there's the creator or soul zone where we start to be independent, interdependent a little bit, but at least independent from others. Then we say we have others here we got to deal with. And then lastly, we reach self-fulfillment. So that's another story here. When you take all these storylines together, you got what they call the seasons or the passages. Gail Sheehy was one of the persons who wrote one of the most notable books on passions and seasons of your life. And so what we have here is conceptually, if you really want to manage yourself, you try to manage yourself through these phases, understanding that there are biological, psychological, social, and economic implications of what you do all along the way. Okay? Now, one more point. An important point for people is that what's it going to cost? This is the first time we've really shown you a financial chart or diagram. There are about 4 or 5 of these distributed through our program. But the one that really brings it home is this one right here, because it tries to convey all the things you got to think about through your adult life. And it's not easy, and there are a lot of specialists who would help you through this. And they all cost money. Some are better than others. Let me just tell you, though, from an overall point of view, and using as the primary resource is a few expert books that I've had a chance to look at, but a lady named Susie Orman, who does a lot of work on public TV, one of the most brilliant people who ever really got in this business, has figured this out and is very, very much on the side of the consumer. So she knows where the specialist would like to send you, but she knows what's good for you based upon your circumstance. And I see her to be the most friendly of the purveyors of financial knowledge. But what you need to know here, and this is what we're all going to have to deal with, and this chapter tells us a bit about it, it has the baseline of employment. So it's talking about these are things that you're going to be doing to earn income. And so along the way, you're going to have different skill sets and different specialties. You're going to have to deal with pensions, IRAs, 401ks, Social Security, and set-asides. Everyone is trying to get some income to live on later on, but not take it out of the money that they're making currently. And that's always a challenge. So it's an area that you have to think about, but also you have to think about the expenditures and places where you're going to spend that money. And so what we have here is for people who have families and they're interested in the college setting, then children become a big consideration. And it's part of continuous learning on learning how to fund the education that you need to go forward. Then there's always insurances to make sure the family, if the family breadwinner, it passes on, how do they do that and how do you keep the family intact? You have investments, you have homes, investment planning groups, estate planning, and then you have consumption, which goes on all the time, and our challenge is got to try to keep our consumption down so that we can do a lot of things here that we have to do. And it's always a challenge, particularly in a capitalistic society, because it's competition every day, every step of the way. So this is an important point in personal system development for financial security. And with that, that brings us back to our famous chart of what is the meaning of your life? Do you have proper balance? Have you thought about this? Have you compared income against expenditure? What are you doing from a savings point of view, an investment point of view, a home buying point of view? What can you turn into money, real money? What's going to cause too high a risk and cause you to lose money? Those are the kinds of things that we think about when it comes to personal growth and development. And of course, always at the end, the thought process here is, if you know that, if you've read that, if you've studied that, what are you going to put your energy on right now to do that? And so we'll talk to you again on the next time on the business aspect of this. That's it.